Hey everyone, welcome back to the table. Today what I wanted to do was show you how I plan on playing Epic Scale Brigade Fire Fury. So Epic Scale because I'll be using the Warlord Games Epic Scale Civil War Infantry, and it actually fits pretty good. I'll show you how. And I've seen on some forum posts folks that took these stands. They're about 2.5 inches long, and then folks were like cutting them in half and making essentially a stand of 5. And then I guess, obviously before they're mounted, you'll take, if you've got those kinds of skills, you'll cut it in half, but that way it semi matches what Brigade Fire Fury normally is, because they base theirs in single rows of men, and then if they have a long enough brigade, they kind of wrap around themselves. So this would be about 4 stands for Brigade Fire Fury, which, I mean, over time in the long scheme of things, that would probably work out pretty good, because some of these battles they're saying you need over 100 stands and things like that, and it could be a lot. But with Epic Scale, I found a way I can kind of work around some of that. Now I still have a lot that needs to be painted, because you still need quite a few brigades of men, and I've got some a couple leaders painted up. I have a little bit. I'm not a super great painter, and I'm not a fast painter. I have a couple things that are in the progress of getting painted, but it takes a little bit of time. This is basically, here we've got like their pants, their boots, hats, but I still got to do like rifles and some of the belts and different things they have. So there's still some detail to do on them before they're done, and then base them and flock the base. But yeah, I'm just slow at it. I have enough. If I do a brigade as 3 of these epic scale stands, I have 4 brigades of Confederate and Union, so I have like a division, and then I've played games with that, and it works great. So I have a really good feeling that just the more I add to it, it'll just look all that more impressive on the table. So small scale battles. Now, and I've played it where I had a division leader where he had like 2 stands or like 3 brigades, and then another division commander had like 1 brigade for flanking and scouting. So there's a couple different ways I could play it, but I myself, I really want to paint up a lot more so I can do some historical scenarios. Alright, but how do you make that work? So we already mentioned that in the game the stands are about 1 inch, and then people are cutting theirs up so they can kind of meet those bases, because one of the things is how the stands are calculated and the size of that brigade. So the way Brigade Fire Fury does, I'm going to grab some unions here of no particular import, and we're going to zoom in, and we're going to see if you can read that label. Alright, let's see here. Sorry, not professional editing. But what we have here are 3 numbers, and depending on size of brigade, and again, I'm not doing a rules tutorial, but you've got 3 numbers here that represent the size, and you have fresh, worn, spent. As they take damage, they would do base removal. So this would start with 8 bases, and so every time they had a casualty, it says like remove a stand or skedaddle, lose a stand or something. You just take a stand. And then as the numbers of stands whittle down, then you would know that you are fresh. If you had 8, you'd still be fresh if you had 7. But then once you had 6 stands, excuse me, breathing down the wrong pipe. Once you were down to 6 stands and 5 stands, you'd be worn, and then spent is 4 or less, and then once there's only one stand left, it leaves. Okay, so I can't do that with these. So what I'm doing, and I may have to switch to a roster, I'm thinking, But for now, I have these blue Union colored dice. They're just blue. You know, it wasn't specifically called, you know, Union dice. It just very nice blue. And then I have some gray ones for the Confederates, not the butternut squash color that they wear. But when they take a hit, you know, we just put a marker down. Boop. They've had one casualty. Now, in terms of gameplay mechanics, it works great. In terms of the aesthetic of the game, where they're trying to encourage that you use like miniature markers to represent some things so that everything you see on the table kind of fits. Dice do kind of stand out. But mechanically so far, without a roster sheet for tracking all your infantry and units, this works. So if I took, you know, one hit, then I would just subtract, you know, I had 8, subtract 1, I'm at 7, I'm still fresh. And then once you take that second hit, you know, it's now down to 6. Alright, now, here's the brigade. So we've condensed, some of these units have like 20, let's see how many this one had. Yeah, so here's an example of a Confederate unit that had 20 stands in it of green troops with mixed muskets. 20, that's a lot. But it would still be represented by the same three stands. Alright, so you're taking 20 stands, you're putting it down there. So you do lose a sense of scale sometimes with how big a unit is. This 20 is going to be the same length as 3 Union. So on a regular game of Brigade Fire Fury where you're actually using 20 stands, that will be significantly wider. So you do lose some of the detail that way. But for now, until I have like, you know, 1,000 of these, because a friend of mine said, well, you know, if these are 2.5 inches long, you could just take the number, so like 20, divide that by like 2.5, and it comes out to around 8. You could use 8 of these, and then every 2 losses or so, you can take one off. So again, depending on how many of these you have painted up, you can manipulate the numbers a little bit to get semi-accurate to the actual length of like lining out your 20 bases if you're doing 1-inch bases. But with this, even though you kind of lose that sense of scale of 20 versus, you know, 8 units of men, it still works out, you know, for doing all the calculating of damage and stuff like that. So here they are in column, and this could be, because there's like 3 different types of march columns and things that you have, and you know that this could be 1, and then there's enough here that you could do. There's like a marching column where, you know, I can just put them like that. What I would do, shaky camera, sorry about that, is kind of alternate the facing so that, you know, just to remind people, you know, this is a column. They're not in line going this way, they're marching that way, and you could put like their leader at the head of the column to kind of remind you, okay, you know, that's the direction they're going. So 3 gives you some options in terms of different types of columns, and then when you deploy them out into a line, you know, it has a little bit of substance to it. So, you know, this is a brigade. And then as they take casualties, as I was talking before I got sidetracked, you know, if I got my 2 casualties, I'm now down to 6. I now remove a stand. And then I can easily see on the table just, okay, they're worn, you know, or that one's spent because they're only down to the last stand. You know, even though it has 4, or in the case of this Confederate, it would still be a 10 strength unit, whereas this is only a 4 strength unit. So it gives a little bit of fog of war, because a person might look and go, well, you know, I can easily see who is at full strength, partial strength, stuff like that. And maybe realistically in the heat of battle you couldn't see it, but in a stand removal game, you can easily look and go, okay, those guys are weakening, and you can see it here. But there is that little bit of fog of war because, again, unless you go and read the label, which your opponent might say, no, you can't read my labels. You wouldn't know how many people are left necessarily. So there's a little bit of fog of war in that. So I know they're spent, and if I was down to this last Confederate unit, I know that they're spent, but I still don't know their overall strength. So they might still be trying to fight. Okay, so let's see if I can fix that flag. These flags. Alright, so that's the first thing, is we're using 3 bases, and I got that flag all wonky now. 3 bases, and that's how I'm tracking their casualties and the base removal, so I know if they're fresh, worn, or spent, and then use dice for that. Like I said, I might try a roster sheet, so then there's no dice on the table. But here's the thing, and I did order from Eureka Miniatures some like casualty markers. There was a couple different types of markers I ordered from them that, you know, I think one represents a breakthrough. If you do a breakthrough charge, they have a little guy charging, he's holding out his saber or sword or whatever. And then I think there was one for low on ammo, which is like these just empty ammo crates. I don't think I ordered the broken cannons. I figure if a cannon's broken, I'll put something, but I was trying to think economics there. But then I did order some to represent disordered troops, because what I'm doing right now, and again it works, but I'm just putting this red little stone that we got from like the dollar store. I think my cat wants out. Alright, let me go get the cat real quick. Hold on. Alright, thank you. Cat wanted out, so cat's out of the room. So I'll just put this down as a disordered. I figured red, blood. But again, when I'm looking at, you know, a nice table, and you've got dice and these red marble things, stones, it really kind of sticks out, and you lose a little bit of that immersion. So again, that's why I'm, you know, thinking of a roster system to track the units, casualties, which depending on who you play with, I think is great, because I have a friend who likes rosters. I'm good with rosters, but you know, my son, he's okay with just putting down dice, because he doesn't really see this as a simulation and, you know, eye candy. It's a game, so here's the markers for the game. So your mileage may vary on that, but for now, until I have nice markers I can paint up to represent, you know, casualties or a roster. See, that's why the base removal of just basic Brigade Fire Fury is nice, is because, you know, you just remove the base, so you don't actually have to track numbers. So again, that's kind of the drawback for the Epic scale, but it's a small sacrifice to pay. Just put a die down or track on a roster the casualties, and then you can still use your Epic scale stuff. And it does work great. Like for example, if I need to wheel. Now, again, it's not perfect or exact, but I did print out. I didn't mount this on chipboard or anything like that. I got lazy with it. These other ones I put on some chipboard, so they have, you know, they're kind of sturdy. They feel a little more professional. And this one I just printed, cut out. I did cut out the 1 and 2. The 1 and 2, when I was first playing, when I was first experimenting with this, I was using just one stand to represent the entire forces. So I was using the 1 and 2 portion. This is 3, but they had a 1, a 2, and a 1 for doing like wheels and things like that. But now that I'm using all 3 stands to represent a brigade, then this is actually about 7.5 inches. So it kind of goes beyond a little bit beyond the 5. But what I do, and it's okay, I don't think it really loses a whole lot, but like if I'm wheeling to the left, then I just stick the wheel here on the farthest outside unit, and then just count, you know, how many how many move points I'm using to get somewhere, you know, and then you just move those guys. So you can still use your wheels and things and other aids that you have from the game. Now, there's a little bit of math, and sometimes that can be a detractor from things like combat, because again, some of the combat you do, like shooting, is how many stands can shoot at something. Well, since I'm not counting individual stands, I sometimes have to break this down into thirds or 2/3. So if I'm at a good number like 6, for example, let's say I'm down to 6 strength, and we're going to shoot at this Confederate unit, which is over here, then I need to know how many of these stands can actually shoot. So you take your arc diagram here, I'm going to flip it over here to the right hand side, and I can look and say, depending on where you want to measure from, either the outside, like, okay, that's in arc. I could go here and say, okay, that's in arc, so that's 2/3, but this last stand is not in arc, so I would know that's 2/4. So now I've got 4. Let's see, forget what it's called here. The shooting musketry points. Forget what this is your point. Oh, trying to think what it's called. They're called like fire points, I think, something like that. So again, not teaching you the game, but based on range and the type of weapon that you're firing, each stand would essentially give you like 2 of these fire points if you were close enough, or 1 if you were like at long range. So I would know that with my 6 remaining stands, or 6 units left, and only 2 can fire, then that would be 4 fire points at, say, 2-inch range. It makes sense for people who have played the game and understand that a little bit, so I'm sorry if I'm not explaining that in detail. Maybe one day we'll sit down and kind of explain that with this how it worked. But anyway, I know that only these 2 bases can hit that target. And then I think you're allowed to have the rest of the brigade shoot at something else if they can't shoot, but there's nothing for him to shoot at on this side. So that's how I'm handling counting up your stands and bases to shoot at targets. And then if a number turns out to be like 2.5 fire points, they don't have a chart or an entry for 2.5. It's all an even number. So what we do is we roll a die, and then if it's 1 through 4, or like 1 through 5, we round down, and then 6 through 10 we round up. So if I only had like 2.5 fire points, I could roll, and I know, okay, I'm going to round that down, so it's 2 fire points. So that's how we handle any halves that we end up with. And as long as it's consistent between the 2 players, then you'll have some times where you get to go up a number, or sometimes it's down, but at least it's consistent throughout the game. But anyway, that's a little bit what we're doing for firing. You can still use your arc templates to see which stands can fire. You can still use your wheels, so you can still make your wheels. And then even if I'm doing movement like obliques, everything, all of your templates that you've made still work perfectly for the game. Since I've moved him off, but I just lay it down, and then depending on how much of a straight ahead or a 15-degree advancement that way, so then I can just follow. I just pick like the corner here of the unit and then slide that to the number. So if I'm going at 15 degrees out to 2, then we just slide it up, and I've just ever so slightly moved, remove it, and then put these guys. So all of your templates still work. Combat, dice rolling, all that still works the same way. In fact, what's really nice is, if I pull out artillery, the artillery pretty much fits the basing of the game anyway. So all of your individual stuff, cavalry might fall into something like this, because the Epic Cavalry is also kind of based on similar basing size, but then your leaders are individually mounted. Cannons come on their own little individual basing as well. So there's a lot here that uses the game like exactly the same. The only thing I really had to think about is how I wanted to represent infantry and turn, 20 inches worth of stands if you have the guy with 20 bases, and how to turn that into something that works with the epic scale. And so far, it works pretty good. Like I said, you only lose a little bit of visual representation where, you might have a unit with 20 bases at start, and it's the same length and size as one that starts with 8. But I thought I'd share that. That's a little bit where I'm at on playing Brigade Fire Fury with my epic scale stuff. I'm going to get to play a game. I've played a couple times now with different people, and I've got hopefully another game coming up in a couple of weeks. But I don't think I'm quite ready to film anything as far as like a battle report to see how it works out. I definitely would like to paint a lot more soldiers, so maybe I could do, I don't have enough yet to do a historical battle, but if I, make up a battle, I would like to have at least 2 divisions, so it'd be like a small corps, and then that would be, 4, how many brigades? 4 brigades per division is what I'm shooting for, because like I said, right now I've got 4 brigades painted. Now, what I'm doing, and this is another reason why this works really good with Brigade Fire Fury, is the labels. If I use a roster and then get some of the markers painted up that I bought, then the only thing that really shows on the table are the little tabs to tell you, what unit this belongs to and their firepower. And what's really kind of cool is the way that, and I didn't plan this, it just happened to work out and I didn't notice it. What I did with these epic scale figures is on the bottom of their base I put 2 pennies, and mostly that was just to give them weight. Well, when you put the label, luckily the labels for Brigade Fire and Fury fit exactly between those 2 pennies. So you might be saying, okay, so, well, what's cool is when you are, say, putting them in column, then the label is gone, and now you have your immersion of that unit marching somewhere. Yeah, it's pretty neat. I mean, the only drawback is every once in a while, if I had to be reminded what this is, I just kind of, got to pull it out, look at it, and then it just slides right back into place. So I thought that was kind of cool. That's probably about all I need to share with that. So it's coming along cool. I'm actually very happy with it. And if anybody was curious, how you could do your epic scale stuff with Brigade Fire and Fury, that for me right now is my solution, and it's working out pretty good. I just have to learn the rules better. That's a different video. I think I got this down fairly well. It's not like it's the most complicated game, but because I play a lot of games, I still sometimes try to reference other game rules on handling situations and confuse what needs to be done here with Brigade Fire and Fury. So I'm actually kind of playing a hybrid of Brigade Fire and Fury because I'm mixing it with these. And anyway, as long as I'm playing and we're happy and everyone's consistently playing it wrong, we're golden. So that's it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Leave your comments. How do you play with your epic scale figures? Do you play a different rule set beyond black powder? Did you make any modifications to the bases? Because that's one thing I haven't seen a whole lot of. I think I've seen a couple pictures where somebody took a command stand like this, cut out like the 2 sets of figures in the middle, because there's actually a guy here like holding his sword and then the flag bearer and whatnot, and they actually cut it up to where they then stuck the horse, the guy on the horse, and he's like surrounded there by his infantry. So that's like the only modification to the stands I've seen. But if anybody has like a website that's got pictures of how people have further modified their stands, I'd be curious to see how that looks. I probably won't do it because I'm not that clever, but I'm always curious to see how people make games work with the stuff they have, or make the stuff they have work with the game. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.